social credit is tied directly to limiting your wealth. So could you please explain to the audience what this new concept of social credit is? It sounds like something right out of 1984, but of course, I would love for you to explain exactly what that means and how that's tied in with any type of ownership.
Sure. So there's sort of the concept of social credit in an informal state and social credit in a formalized state. And in an informal state, we've seen it with cancel culture. And we've seen it obviously, during COVID, people who didn't follow sort of the prescribed narratives were, shunned from society. They were told they were not essential. If you didn't take the vaccine, you could actually lose your job, your business. In some cases, if a third of the businesses were shut down. So there is this kind of element of just in the day-to-day. And then you can also just think of the personalities, the Joe Rogans, the Dave Chappelles, Ellen DeGeneres, and obviously a lot of people who show up on video doing something that people don't like, often to be found out later, oh, by the way, the video didn't tell the whole story, that people go after them. And when they're going after them, whether it's to silence them or to punish them, the financial realm is really important to that, because if you are not on sort of the right side of social credit or the right think, whatever you want to call it, it's going to go after your social standing. And your social standing creates opportunities for you to get jobs and to create wealth. Sometimes it goes after your actual job, as we've seen, which is obviously your wealth. And in the cases of our businesses being shut down or the Freedom Convoy truckers in Canada, sometimes it actually goes after your wealth and freezes it. So we've seen this in a very informal way, although obviously, the government has been found to be colluding more with some of these entities. We saw the Twitter files. We saw some of the suppression of this person is aligned with the narrative and this person is not. And it takes us to a formalized social credit system, which is something that is happening right now in China. And I know it may sound like, oh, Carol, this isn't China. We don't live in a communist arena. We would never be like China. And like 5 or 10 years ago, I'd say, yeah, you're probably right. But some of the things that have happened over the last, 3+ years makes it kind of hard to say that. So with social credit in China, they have actually very much formalized this. And to formalize this, there's only 2 things you really need. One is technology to be able to do this at scale, which obviously the technology is robust now. And 2 is the buy-in of the people. And we saw during COVID how willing people were to turn on neighbors, family members, anyone they didn't like on the internet, whatever, to jump in to protect their narrative. So we have kind of the makings of this. In China, it's a little scary. It's not as pronounced as some people say it is, that people have sort of the information wrong. So it's more of a regional system than it is like one big system top down. But many of them have grades. So some of them use a letter grading system. Some of them use a number grading system. And it's all to push whatever that particular jurisdiction thinks is important. And it's not just like normal things that you would think of like abiding by the law. It's stuff like you can get good points, good social credit for giving blood or going to visit your parents. You can get negative social credit for taking up too much room in an airplane, which I think is really annoying, but the government shouldn't give you bad social credit for that.
This is like this literally is a Black Mirror episode. There was literally a Black Mirror episode about this whole concept, and it's extremely creepy. And I actually don't necessarily mind it when it's in the positive direction. It's the problem of it when it's in the negative direction, because it's like, your airline, for example, gives you bonus points, right? They can't say, oh, we didn't like your attitude today, we're taking points away from you.
But it's also different, right? If it's different, if it's the airline doing it and you have maybe some choices between airlines and the government who has, a military and a jail system and a legal system doing it. But it's so weird that you mentioned, Jen, the Black Mirror thing. So go back to like 1984. There's a story. And one of the things that's important in my book is I take the conspiracy out of all these things we're talking about. Everything is really well sourced. So there's a story from NPR, and they go visit this guy. His name is Lao Juan, and he was in the coal trade business. He was basically an intermediary, and the Chinese government completely changed their tenor on coal, and he was stuck, like completely imploded him financially because of the government. One day couldn't pay his debts, so he goes on the blacklist. He can't fly, he can't travel. He goes into town and he looks up and there's a billboard with his picture on it and his identifying number, and it says, "This is an untrustworthy person." And then it cycles through all these people, and he's like, "Yeah, I recognize a lot of people from the coal industry based on what happens." But, you know, like you said, it sounds like Black Mirror or Orwell, but the reality is, you know, go over to Twitter, see a video of somebody doing something that, you know, people find horrible, and they're calling their employer and they're doing the same kinds of things. So we're kind of like this far away from it. And something that we may or may not get to talk to about a central bank digital currency could be tied in with this system in terms of compliance. So I think it's one of the things that's very important, because in terms of, as I said, again, your ability to have opportunities and create wealth, or your assets, these all become more and more at risk the more that social credit becomes formalized and we let a handful of people decide, you know, what are the things that we're going to incentivize and what are the things we're going to disincentivize, and we're going to tie your financial future to it. It's really horrifying.
Yeah, it sounds very similar. And we're speaking with Carol Roth, author of You Will Own Nothing and Like It. One of the more...
You will not like it. You will not like it. It's how you fight back.
One of the things that I found very interesting, if you remember, I guess it's probably about 15, 16 years ago, maybe even a little longer. Could be almost 20 years ago, when Tom Cruise pulled that stunt on the Oprah Winfrey Show. And everyone really at that point started questioning, what is this Church of Scientology? And what exactly do they mean by being a suppressive person? And so at that time, the general consensus was, man, this is crazy. Well, you're trying to basically blacklist people, very much like 1984, and yet you come full circle today, and it seems like that is the order of the day.
May I still say I do think they're crazy?
Well, yes, I don't disagree.
And that's neither here nor there.
I think we experienced that a lot during the course of COVID, but I only think COVID just made it that much more obvious.
Yes.
And one thing that I always like to say, and I think we're in agreement on this in general, is that I'm very much on the economic left. I am not on the, social justice left, if you will, from the standpoint of everybody's a bad person if they do not agree with this, that, and the other thing. You have to accept that there are different segments of the United States of America. There is a huge difference between Chicago, Illinois, and Springfield, Illinois. And that would be the simplest example that I can give. And the same is true for just about anywhere else you would go. Unfortunately, the social credit is something that seems like a lot of things in the neoliberal world that we live in, that what goes in New York and DC and LA and San Francisco and Chicago is that's the law, that you have to obey these laws in terms of social benevolence. And if you do not, then we will see to it that you're either eliminated, or we will basically say that you're not even worthy of support. Kind of like what happened in East Palestine, where everyone's like, oh, well, this is Trump country, so to hell with those people.
Right. No, it's
crazy.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. I want to share with you actually another story from the book. It's sort of a little vignette, because I think it's important for people to realize that a lot of these things sound good at their core. And so, like, you may say, well, of course it would make sense to have social credit about this thing, but it can so easily be distorted. So we talked Black Mirror, we talked 1984. We're going to talk about the Twilight Zone now. So there's a vintage Twilight Zone episode. And in the episode, you have these aliens who come down to Earth. And the people of Earth, of course, are a little bit skeptical, like, why are you here? And they said, well, we see that you have wars, and we see that you have famines, and we have created this technology, and we just want to help you guys. We figured we would just help you because what you have going on here is horrible. And of course, they're all skeptical. So they go and they do a lie detector test, and the alien passes the lie detector. Meanwhile, he's left behind a book, and the kind of CIA-ish people are decoding the book. And they come up, they're only able to crack the title. And the title is To Serve Man. And they said, well, to serve man seems like a noble concept, and it seems consistent with what the alien is saying. And I think we should trust the alien. So everyone's, okay, this is great. And they start signing up and going on trips to the alien's land. They get in spaceship. And then, one of the heads of the CIA kind of bureau is getting on the spaceship, and his employee comes running out. And as he's boarding, she's like, I decoded the rest of the book. To Serve Man is a cookbook. And I want people to take that away, because what sounds like a noble intention often is wrapped up in something else. So To Serve Man, you guys, can also be a cookbook, and you have to keep that in mind. Not everybody has the best intentions, even when something sounds great at the surface.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.